The first wave hit Earth's orbital defense grid at 0600 hours GMT, and across every military command center on the planet, officers didn't panic. They sipped coffee. The Zephara Collective had brought 4,000 warships, enough firepower to crack a moon in half, and they'd positioned them in a textbook invasion formation above Earth's major population centers. It was impressive. It was also exactly what Scenario 7 predicted they would do. In the sprawling war room beneath Washington, General Catherine Moss watched the holographic display with the kind of bored patience usually reserved for waiting in traffic. Before we see how humanity answered that threat, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Around her, analysts updated threat assessments with mechanical efficiency, their voices calm, almost casual. No alarms. No shouting. Just the steady hum of a machine that had run this exact drill 347 times. Ma'am, we're receiving their surrender demand, Lieutenant Chun reported, pulling up the translation matrix. Standard intimidation package. Kneel or burn. The usual. Moss nodded, setting down her coffee mug on a coaster that read World's Okayest General. She'd received variations of this message in every major simulation since 2089. The Zephara were following the script perfectly. Send the automated response file, she said. Catalog Delta 9. The polite one. Chen's fingers moved across his console. Transmitted. Should I activate the defense grid? Not yet. Let's see if they're smart enough to take the hint. 300 kilometers above Earth, aboard the Zephara flagship Claw of Dominion, Fleet Commander Thexil watched his scanner operator's mandibles click in confusion. The human response had arrived in under 30 seconds. That was fast. Too fast. What does it say? Thexil demanded. The operator's skin flushed orange with uncertainty. It's a form letter, Commander. Pre-written. They're citing interstellar convention protocols and suggesting we review Section 12 regarding lawful engagement standards before proceeding. Thexil felt his blood pressure spike. A form letter. The humans had sent his armada a form letter. Tell them we have 4,000 ships. Tell them resistance is futile. Already attempted, sir. They sent another automated response. This one includes a link to their publicly available defensive capability assessment and a politely worded recommendation that we reconsider. Back in the Washington Command Center, Moss was reading through the Zephara counter-response when her second-in-command, Colonel David Park, arrived with a tablet and a knowing smile. They're not backing down, he said. Shocked face. Should we move to Phase 2? Moss checked the chronometer. The alien fleet had been in position for exactly 11 minutes. In Scenario 7 Alpha, the simulated Zephara waited 15 minutes before opening fire. These real ones were following the script with almost mathematical precision. Give them 4 more minutes, she said. If they're going to deviate from the model, I want to know now. And if they don't deviate, then we run the standard response protocol. Minimal casualties, maximum deterrence, home by dinner. Across the planet, military installations hummed to life with the same casual readiness of a fire drill. Fighter pilots climbed into cockpits they'd sat in 1,000 times before for 1,000 simulated alien invasions. Naval vessels adjusted formation patterns they'd rehearsed until they could execute them in their sleep. Ground forces checked equipment with the muscle memory of repetition so ingrained it had become boring. Humanity had spent 70 years preparing for first contact. They'd built an entire military doctrine around the assumption that someone eventually would show up looking for a fight. They'd run every scenario, stress-tested every strategy, and prepared for every contingency from diplomatic negotiation to total war. What they hadn't expected was how utterly predictable their enemy would be. Commander Thexil was done with warnings. All ships, target Earth's major cities. On my mark, we demonstrate our power. His weapons officer hesitated. Sir, sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures across their planet. Defensive installations activating. They're everywhere. How many? 17,000 confirmed positions, Commander. And counting. Thexil's confidence wavered for the first time since entering Earth's system. 17,000 positions? For a pre-contact civilization? That's impossible. Our intelligence said they were primitive, divided, unprepared. Yes, sir. The intelligence was apparently incorrect. In Washington, the chronometer hit 15 minutes. Lieutenant Chun looked up from his console, eyebrow raised. They're charging weapons, ma'am. All ships. Targeting profile matches Scenario 7 Alpha with 98% accuracy. General Moss allowed herself a slight smile. Predictable. Beautifully, wonderfully predictable. Activate full defensive grid. Execute response protocol 7. And someone please update the simulation database. These Zephara are textbook. The war room's lighting shifted from white to tactical blue as Earth's true defensive capability revealed itself. Across the planet, thousands of concealed weapon systems emerged from camouflage, orbital platforms that had been dismissed as satellites reoriented to combat positions, and defensive shields that shouldn't have existed for a species Earth's age blazed to life with casual readiness. The Zephara had brought 4,000 ships to conquer Earth. They were about to discover why humanity had prepared for 40,000. The message had been sent. Now came the fighting. Except it wasn't really fighting in the way Commander Thexil understood the concept. It was more like watching his entire invasion force get systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed almost bored with the process. The first Zephara volley screamed toward Earth's surface, plasma charges hot enough to vaporize steel. They struck General Moss's defensive shields and dissipated like raindrops on glass. The second volley achieved identical results. So did the third. Sir, Thexil's tactical officer reported, his voice climbing toward panic. Their shields are absorbing 99% of our firepower. Energy dispersal patterns suggest they've encountered plasma weapons before. Recently. Often. That's impossible, Thexil snapped. They've never left their system. In the Washington Command Center, Colonel Park was updating the tactical board with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for completing paperwork. Zephara Fleet is maintaining Assault Pattern Delta 7. No tactical creativity. No adaptation. Just the standard hammer until it breaks approach. General Moss nodded, watching her screens track 4,000 enemy vessels all executing the exact same predictable maneuvers they'd practiced against for decades. Recommendations. We could end this in 6 minutes with the Eisenhower Protocol, Park said. Full orbital superiority, minimal enemy casualties, very impressive light show. Too aggressive. Let's try the Wellington first. Give them a chance to reconsider their life choices before we embarrass them completely. The Wellington Protocol was humanity's polite version of warfare. Developed specifically for first contact scenarios, it involved demonstrating overwhelming capability while providing multiple exit ramps for the aggressor to retreat with some dignity intact. It was essentially the military equivalent of giving someone every opportunity to stop punching themselves in the face. Earth's defensive batteries opened up with precisely calibrated return fire, not aimed at the Zephara ships themselves, but at the empty space around them. Brilliant blue energy pulses bracketed the alien fleet, close enough to rattle their sensors, far enough away to make the message clear. We could hit you if we wanted to, but we're being nice. Commander Thexil watched the human weapons fire paint perfect targeting solutions around his ships and felt his stomach drop into his lower intestine. Every shot missed. Every single shot missed by exactly the same margin. That wasn't incompetence. That was precision. That was a message. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered desperately. Pattern Omega-3. His fleet scattered into defensive formations, executing complex avoidance protocols that the Zephara military had perfected over 6 centuries of warfare. The human weapons tracking adjusted instantly, maintaining their perfect near-miss brackets as if the Zephara ships were standing still. They weren't missing. They were choosing not to hit. Sir, receiving another human transmission, the communications officer said quietly. Thexil almost didn't want to hear it. Play it. General Moss's face appeared on the holographic display, her expression carrying the patient disappointment of a teacher watching a student fail the same test repeatedly. She spoke calmly, clearly. Zephara Fleet, this is General Catherine Moss of the Terran Defense Coalition. You are currently engaged in hostile action against a protected world. We are authorized to use necessary force to ensure Earth's safety. However, we strongly encourage you to review your tactical position and reconsider your current course of action. You have 30 minutes to withdraw beyond the system boundary. This offer expires once and will not be repeated. The transmission ended. Thexzil stared at the empty space where the human general's face had been. 30 minutes. They were giving him 30 minutes to run away. Status report, he said, his voice hollow. Fleet integrity? Minimal damage, Commander. Their weapons haven't actually struck any ships. But, the tactical officer hesitated. But what? Sir, I've analyzed their firing patterns. They're not missing. They're demonstrating accuracy. Every shot is positioned to show us they can hit any point on our hulls they choose. They're toying with us. In orbit above New York, fighter pilot Captain Sarah Torres led her squadron through a textbook intercept pattern they'd flown so many times it had become muscle memory. Her targeting computer painted perfect locks on 17 Zephara interceptors, and she held fire, waiting for authorization that probably wouldn't come. This was a Wellington Protocol engagement. That meant demonstration, not destruction. Sierra 3 to command, she called in. I've got clean shots on the forward screen. Permission to engage. Negative, Sierra 3. The response came back. Maintain escort pattern. Fire only if they target civilian centers. Torres grinned inside her helmet. Fire only if they target civilian centers. That was code for, they won't because they're following the script, so just keep looking intimidating and let them make the smart choice. Copy that, command. Staying scary. Commander Thexzil was out of options and running out of time. 22 minutes remained on the human ultimatum. His fleet was intact but completely outmatched. Every tactical simulation he ran ended the same way. Total annihilation within minutes if the humans stopped being polite. Communications, open a command-level channel to their general. Channel open, sir. Thexzil straightened his uniform, preparing to deliver the speech he'd rehearsed for this exact scenario. The desperate final demand before retreating in tactical disgrace. General Moss appeared on screen before he could speak, and her expression stopped him cold. She looked tired. Not angry, not triumphant, just tired, like she'd done this too many times before. Commander, Moss said simply, I'm hoping you're calling to accept the withdrawal offer. Thexzil felt his pride crumble. Your defensive capabilities were significantly underestimated in our intelligence briefing. They usually are, Moss replied without emotion. That's why we publish them publicly. Most species don't bother reading before they attack. You've encountered this situation before? You're the 7th invasion fleet this decade, Commander. The Krell were bigger. The Vorash were faster. The Venari were honestly more creative with their approach. But you all make the same fundamental mistake. Which is, you assume we've been sitting here peacefully because we're weak. We've been sitting here peacefully because we're prepared. Pause. Thexzil looked at his chronometer. 18 minutes remained. If we withdraw now, will you pursue? No, Moss said. You leave, we update our first contact protocols. You go home and tell everyone Earth isn't worth the trouble. Everybody lives. Everybody learns. No hard feelings. He'd come here to conquer a primitive world. He'd found a military machine that had been waiting decades for exactly this moment. And they were offering him a clean exit. We're withdrawing, Thexzil said quietly. Wise choice, Commander. The transmission ended. In the Washington War Room, Colonel Park marked the Zephara fleet status as retreating on the tactical display and glanced at General Moss. That's 7 successful Wellington protocols in a row, ma'am. Think we should update the training scenarios. Make it 8, Moss said, watching the alien ships begin their withdrawal burn. Somewhere out there is a species that won't follow the script. And if we meet them? Moss picked up her coffee mug, finding it cold. Then we stop being polite. 3 hours after the Zephara fleet jumped out of Earth system, Lieutenant Elena Vasquez sat in the debriefing room at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California, filling out after-action reports with the enthusiasm of someone filing taxes. Around her, other pilots from the defensive screen did the same, occasionally breaking the silence with observations about alien flight patterns and tactical decisions. Anyone else notice they flew in perfect parade formation? Someone asked. Made targeting solutions embarrassingly easy. They did exactly what the Scenario 7 sims predicted, another pilot added. Right down to the retreat vector. It was eerie. Elena signed her name at the bottom of page 12 and wondered, not for the first time, if humanity's obsession with preparation had turned warfare into something closer to theater. They'd known what the aliens would do. The aliens had done exactly that. Everyone went home. Roll credits. 200 kilometers above Earth. Aboard the orbital defense platform Bastion 7, Sergeant James Okoye was running post-engagement diagnostics on the plasma battery array he'd operated during the Zephara assault. The weapons had performed flawlessly, as they always did. He'd fired exactly 37 warning shots, each one placed within centimeters of his designated near-miss coordinates. Textbook Wellington Protocol execution. His commanding officer, Commander Rachel Price, floated past in the zero-gravity operations deck, checking readiness status across all stations. Good work today, Sergeant. Clean shots, perfect spacing. Thank you, ma'am, Okoye replied, pulling up his firing solution logs. Though I have to admit, it felt less like combat and more like a very expensive demonstration. Price smiled slightly. That's the point. We train until the demonstration is scarier than the actual fight. Back in Washington, General Moss was briefing the civilian government leadership via secure holoconference. President Andrews looked simultaneously relieved and concerned, which Moss recognized as the standard expression for glad nobody died. Worried about next time. General, your report indicates the Zephara followed predicted behavior patterns with over 98% accuracy. Should we be concerned that we're getting too comfortable with these scenarios? Moss had been expecting that question. Mr. President, comfort is the wrong word. We're proficient. There's a difference. The moment we encounter a species that doesn't follow predictable military doctrine, our entire strategy shifts to adaptive protocols, which are significantly less polite, Moss said frankly. The Wellington Protocol works because most spacefaring civilizations develop similar tactical thinking. They probe defenses, test responses, escalate gradually. We've built our entire defensive posture around exploiting that predictability. And if we meet someone unpredictable, then we're prepared for that too. We have 47 contingency protocols for non-standard aggression. We just haven't needed them yet. 3,000 light-years away, in a star system humanity didn't have a name for, the Zephara fleet limped into dock at their forward staging base. Commander Thexzil filed his after-action report with the bitter efficiency of someone who'd just experienced comprehensive professional humiliation. The report would reach the Zephara High Command within days, and it would tell them what 6 other defeated fleet commanders had already reported. Earth was not a viable target. The humans had been ready, completely, terrifyingly ready. In the staging base's command center, Admiral Krethzor read Thexzil's preliminary report with growing unease. 7 invasion attempts, 7 failures, 7 identical stories of overwhelming human preparation and surgical defensive capability. Something wasn't adding up. Communications, Krethzor said slowly. Get me secure channels to every fleet commander who's engaged Earth in the last decade. I want a coordinated intelligence review. Sir. 7 separate commanders, 7 separate engagements, 7 identical results. Either Earth is impossibly lucky, or they've been preparing for us specifically. I want to know which. On Earth, in a modest office in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Dr. Marcus Webb sat in front of a classified computer terminal, updating the probabilistic first contact scenario database with fresh data from the Zephara engagement. The database was his life's work, a comprehensive model predicting alien military behavior based on evolutionary biology, cultural development patterns, and strategic psychology. It had achieved 94% predictive accuracy across all 7 first contact scenarios humanity had faced. And that terrified him. Dr. Webb pulled up his personal research notes, the ones that never made it into official reports. The calculations he ran privately late at night when nobody was watching. the probability curves that suggested something deeply uncomfortable about humanity's situation. If the model was this accurate, it meant one of two things. Either humanity had somehow cracked the universal code of military strategy, or they'd encountered an impossibly convenient sample of alien civilizations that all happened to think exactly alike. Statistical anomaly or something else entirely. He pulled up the comparative data. 7 alien species. 7 different homeworlds. 7 completely different evolutionary paths. And yet their military doctrines were similar enough that Earth's defenders could predict their tactics with computer simulation precision. Dr. Webb typed a single word into his secure notes file. Why? 3 hours later, his terminal pinged with an encrypted message. High priority flag. The sender was listed as External Intelligence Division. Special access required. Webb's security clearance wasn't supposed to include external intelligence. He opened it anyway. The message was short. Dr. Webb, your probability curves are showing the same pattern we've been tracking. Request in-person briefing, your earliest convenience. Classified beyond your current level. Apologies for the cryptic approach. You've been asking the right questions. We think we have answers. Colonel David Park, Special Projects Division. Webb stared at the message for a long moment, then typed his response. Tomorrow, 0900. I'll bring my models. In Washington, General Moss was reading the same classified intelligence summary that had prompted Colonel Park to contact Dr. Webb. The summary was titled, Pattern Analysis, First Contact Military Engagements, Anomaly Assessment. She'd read it 3 times, and each time the conclusion felt more unsettling. 7 species, 7 invasions, 7 near-identical tactical approaches. The statistical probability of that occurring naturally was infinitesimally small, which suggested the encounters weren't natural. Someone somewhere was coordinating these invasions, testing Earth, probing humanity's defenses with carefully calibrated scenarios designed to look independent but following a deliberate pattern. The question was why, and more importantly, who. Moss closed the file and pulled up the defensive protocol database. 47 contingency plans for non-standard aggression. She wondered if that would be enough. Across the planet, in military installations from California to Connecticut, soldiers went about their duties with the calm efficiency of routine. They'd successfully defended Earth again. The system worked. The training paid off. Everything proceeded according to plan. None of them knew the plan might belong to someone else. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived at the Pentagon sublevel facility at precisely 0900, carrying a laptop encrypted with algorithms that would make a paranoid AI nervous. Colonel David Park met him at the security checkpoint with the kind of smile that promised uncomfortable revelations. Doctor, thank you for coming. I realized the message was vague. It was cryptic enough to guarantee my attendance, Webb replied, following Park through corridors that descended deeper than any public Pentagon tour would acknowledge. You mentioned answers. I'm extremely interested in answers. They entered a conference room that looked like it had been borrowed from a science fiction film. Holographic displays, quantum encrypted data terminals, and a security classification warning that read, Special Access Required. Cosmic Clearance. Webb's current clearance was 3 levels below that. General Moss was already there, along with 2 people Webb didn't recognize. A woman in civilian clothes with the analytical eyes of an intelligence officer, and a man in Navy uniform whose rank insignia Webb didn't immediately recognize. Park made introductions quickly. Dr. Webb, you know General Moss. This is Director Sarah Chun, External Intelligence Analysis. And Captain Elijah Torres, Strategic Forecasting Division. Webb shook hands mechanically, his mind already racing ahead to why these specific people were in this specific room. You said you had answers about the pattern anomalies in first contact scenarios. We do, Director Chun said, gesturing to the holographic display. But you're not going to like them. The display lit up with a galactic map, showing Earth's position and the locations of all 7 alien species that had attempted invasion. Red lines connected them in a web pattern that made Webb's stomach tighten. 7 species, Chun continued. 7 completely independent civilizations according to all xenological analysis. Different evolutionary paths, different technologies, different cultural frameworks. But their military approaches to Earth were statistically identical. Which shouldn't be possible, Webb said quietly. Which isn't possible, Moss corrected. Not naturally. Captain Torres pulled up a new data layer, showing communication intercepts and intelligence reports humanity had gathered over the last decade. We started noticing coordinated patterns 18 months ago. Encrypted transmissions between species that supposedly had no contact with each other. Shared tactical databases. Synchronized timing on invasion attempts. Someone is organizing them, Webb said, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. Someone is sending these species to test us. We call it the Proctor hypothesis, Park said, named after the lieutenant who first flagged the anomaly. The theory is that a third-party, unknown, powerful, technologically advanced, has been curating first contact scenarios for Earth, feeding us predictable enemies to gauge our response capabilities. Webb felt his academic worldview crumbling. Why? What's the strategic purpose? That's the question that terrifies us, General Moss said simply. Because there are only two logical answers. Director Chun expanded the holographic display, showing probability models that Webb recognized from his own research. Option 1. Someone is preparing Earth for a real threat, training us through controlled scenarios to ensure we survive actual hostile contact. Benevolent oversight. And Option 2? Webb asked, though he suspected he knew. Option 2. Someone is cataloging our defensive capabilities, learning our doctrine, studying our responses, preparing for an invasion of their own. Hostile reconnaissance disguised as independent attacks. The room fell silent. Webb stared at the data, running the calculations in his mind. Both options fit the evidence. Both were terrifying in different ways. How certain are you? He asked. Of the pattern? Chen said. 97%. Of the interpretation? 50-50. We can't determine intent without more information. Captain Torres pulled up tactical assessments from all 7 engagements. The Zephara fleet that just withdrew? They made one interesting deviation from predicted behavior. Right before retreat, their commander asked a question. He played the audio recording. Commander Thexil's voice, translated and filtered. You've encountered this situation before? General Moss's response. You're the 7th invasion fleet this decade. Torres paused the playback. Notice anything about his reaction? Webb watched the video analysis. Thexil's facial features showing surprise, but also something else. Recognition. He wasn't surprised we'd been attacked before, Webb said slowly. He was surprised we admitted it. Exactly, Park confirmed. We intercepted Zephara communications after their withdrawal. They're coordinating with the other failed invasion forces. Comparing notes. They're starting to realize they've been used. Which means the Proctor, whoever they are, is losing control of the scenario, Moss added. The test subjects are becoming aware of the test. Director Chen pulled up the most recent intelligence brief. 3 days ago, we detected encrypted communications between the Zephara, Krell, and Vorash military commands. All 3 species attempting to coordinate a joint intelligence analysis. They're asking the same questions we are. What happens when they figure it out? Webb asked. We don't know, Chen admitted. Best case scenario, they share information with us and we all work together to identify the Proctor. Worst case scenario, they assume we're part of the conspiracy and attempt a coordinated second invasion to extract answers by force. Could we defend against a coordinated attack? Webb asked, looking at General Moss. Her expression told him everything. Not with Wellington protocols, she said quietly. We'd need to escalate to Eisenhower or Sherman-level responses. Heavy casualties on both sides, possibly catastrophic. The room absorbed that possibility in silence. Park pulled up a new file, marked with security classifications Webb had never seen before. There's another complication. We've detected anomalous signatures in deep space. 3 separate observation posts have logged identical sensor ghosts, objects that shouldn't exist, moving in patterns that suggest intentional positioning. The Proctor, Webb asked. Possibly. Or possibly whatever the Proctor is preparing us to fight. We're dealing with multiple unknown variables and deteriorating intelligence clarity. The situation is evolving faster than our analysis can keep pace. Captain Torres added another layer to the holographic display. We've also noticed increased activity in the outer system. Automated probes. Data collection buoys. Someone is watching Earth very carefully right now. Recommendations? General Moss asked, looking at each person in turn. Director Chen spoke first. We need direct contact with the defeated invasion forces. Controlled information sharing. Determine if they're willing to cooperate or if they're preparing for escalation. I'll reach out to the Zephara commander, Moss said. Establish back-channel communication. See if he's willing to talk. And the deep space signatures? Park asked. We watch them, Captain Torres said. Carefully. And we prepare for the possibility that whoever's been testing us is about to stop being subtle. Dr. Webb looked at the data one more time, running scenarios in his head. If this is a test, we've been passing. 7 invasions, 7 successful defenses. What happens when we graduate? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. General Moss stood, closing out the holographic display. Gentlemen, Director, we maintain current defensive posture. We continue training protocols. We prepare for every contingency we can imagine. And we hope that when the real threat arrives, it's one we've imagined. The meeting ended. Webb walked out of the Pentagon facility with more questions than he'd brought in. The morning sun felt different somehow, less comforting. Across the solar system, automated sensors registered new contacts entering the outer boundary. Dozens of them. And this time, they weren't following any script humanity had prepared for. The emergency alert reached General Moss at 0347 hours, 3 days after the classified briefing. She was awake in seconds, reading the tactical summary with the cold efficiency of someone who'd been waiting for this exact scenario. 43 unidentified contacts, outer system boundary, vector directly toward Earth, configuration unknown, energy signatures beyond current database classifications, estimated arrival, 72 hours. This wasn't Scenario 7. This wasn't any scenario. Colonel Park was already at the command center when Moss arrived, his face illuminated by holographic displays showing sensor data that made no tactical sense. Talk to me, Moss ordered, pulling up her own station. Contacts designated Unknown Alpha through Unknown Romeo, Park said rapidly. They're not broadcasting identification. They're not following standard approach vectors. And General, he pulled up enhanced sensor readings. They're displaying technological capabilities approximately 400 years beyond current human engineering. Moss felt her pulse steady into combat rhythm. For 100 years. That was the gap between muskets and railguns. Have they responded to hailing attempts? Negative. Complete communications blackout. But General, there's something else. Park enlarged one of the sensor images. These ships aren't similar to anything we've encountered before. They're similar to the deep space signatures we detected last week. In Cambridge, Dr. Webb received the emergency notification on his newly issued high-security terminal. He read it twice, then immediately ran the sensor signatures through his probabilistic models. The computer churned for 17 seconds, an eternity for quantum processors, then returned an answer that made his blood cold. 0% match to any known first contact scenario. 97% probability of intentional approach. 89% confidence these were the Proctors. Webb grabbed his encrypted phone and called Colonel Park directly. I'm seeing the sensor data. These are them. This is who's been orchestrating everything. We know, Park said grimly. General Moss wants you here. Pentagon sub-level facility. How fast can you get to Washington? 3 hours if I break every traffic law. Break them. This is humanity's final exam, Doctor. And we didn't get a study guide. Across the planet, military installations shifted to DEFCON 2. Not publicly. The civilian population remained blissfully unaware that 43 alien vessels were bearing down on Earth with unknown intent. But every soldier, every pilot, every defensive battery operator knew. The training was over. This was real. In California, Captain Sarah Torres ran pre-flight checks on her fighter with hands that didn't shake despite the fear twisting in her stomach. Around her, the squadron prepared with the same mechanical efficiency they'd practiced 10,000 times. Sierra 3 to squadron, she called over comms. Equipment status? Sierra 2, green across the board. Sierra 4, ready. Sierra 7, locked and loaded. The responses came in steady, professional. They were ready for anything. Torres hoped that was true. In Washington, the war room had transformed into something resembling controlled chaos. Every screen showed different aspects of the approaching contacts, trajectory analysis, energy output calculations, comparative technology assessments. None of it was comforting. Dr. Webb arrived at hour 2 of the crisis, still processing traffic violations he'd committed. Director Chun met him at the entrance, her expression grave. "Doctor, we need your models. We need to predict what they'll do when they arrive." "My models were built on predictable behavior," Webb protested, following her through security. "These contacts aren't following any pattern I've programmed." "Then we need new models. Fast." They entered the command center to find General Moss coordinating with military leaders from every Earth nation. The holographic display showed a countdown, 58 hours until contact arrival. Captain Torres pulled up communication protocols that hadn't been tested outside simulations. "General Moss, recommend we attempt communication using the Zephara contact frequencies. If these are the proctors, they may have been monitoring those channels." "Do it," Moss ordered. "Broadcast on all previously used alien frequencies. Standard greeting protocols. Let them know we're aware of their approach and requesting peaceful contact." The message went out at light speed, racing toward the unknown fleet. They waited. 30 minutes. No response. 60 minutes. Silence. 90 minutes. Nothing. "They're not interested in talking," Park said quietly. "Or they're observing our response," Dr. Webb countered, pulling up behavioral models on his laptop. "Every scenario they've sent us, we responded with measured defensive posture. They may be testing if we maintain that discipline when facing an unknown threat. So we stay calm," Moss said. "We show them we're not panicking. Or we show them we're ready," another voice interjected. General William Harper, Joint Chiefs of Staff, appeared on the conference hologram from his secure location. His expression carried the weight of someone preparing to make an impossible decision. "General Moss, recommend we activate Eisenhower Protocol. Full defensive deployment. These contacts represent a clear and present danger to Earth." "Sir, with respect, full deployment could be interpreted as hostile intent," Moss argued. "If these contacts are observing our behavior, overwhelming force posture might trigger exactly the conflict we're trying to avoid. And if they're not observing, if they're attacking, then we've wasted critical preparation time being polite." The room fell silent. Moss understood the calculation Harper was making. It was the same calculation every commander faced. Prepare for the worst and risk creating it, or hope for the best and risk being unprepared. Dr. Webb looked at his probability models, running scenarios faster than the computers could display them. "General Harper, may I suggest a compromise? We deploy to defensive positions but maintain Wellington Protocol posture. Show capability without aggression. Let them see we're ready to defend but not eager to fight." "And if that doesn't work?" Harper asked. "Then we escalate," Moss said firmly. "But we escalate from a position of demonstrated restraint. History will note we tried peace first." Harper considered for a long moment. "Approved. But General Moss, the moment those contacts show hostile intent, you have authorization to use any force necessary." "Am I clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." The connection closed. Across Earth's defensive network, ships moved to station-keeping positions. Weapon systems powered up but didn't lock targeting solutions. Shields activated to passive configuration. The message was clear: "We see you. We're ready. Your move." On the orbital defense platform Bastion 7, Sergeant Okoye watched his targeting computer track all 43 unknown contacts with perfect precision. His finger rested near the fire authorization control, not on it. Ready, not eager. In his earpiece, Commander Price's voice was steady. All stations, maintain defensive posture. No one fires unless fired upon. We show them what discipline looks like. Yes, ma'am, Okoye replied, watching the contacts draw closer. 47 hours to arrival. In the Washington Command Center, Director Chun pulled up the latest intelligence analysis. We've been cross-referencing the unknown contact energy signatures with historical data. There's a partial match to the deep space observation signatures we detected 3 weeks ago. Meaning, Park asked, meaning these ships have been in our system before. Recently, they've been watching us even more closely than we thought. Dr. Webb added a new calculation to his models. If they've been observing our defensive responses to the 7 invasion scenarios, they have a complete tactical profile of humanity's capabilities. They know everything we can do. Not everything, General Moss said quietly. They know what we've shown them. They don't know what we've held in reserve. Park looked at her sharply. We have reserves? Every good military keeps secrets, Colonel. The Wellington Protocol was designed for predicted scenarios. These contacts aren't predicted, which means they're about to see protocols we've never field-tested. Such as, Moss pulled up a classified file directory that made Park's security clearance light up with warnings. Protocols we hoped we'd never need. The ones designed for enemies who learned from watching us fight. The countdown clock ticked down. 43 hours. Somewhere in deep space, 43 vessels continued their unwavering approach toward Earth. They hadn't communicated. They hadn't deviated. They hadn't explained their intent. They were coming, and humanity was ready. Ready for what, exactly, remained the question that kept everyone awake. 36 hours before contact, the unknown fleet did something humanity didn't expect. They stopped. 3 million kilometers from Earth's outer defensive perimeter, all 43 vessels simultaneously decelerated to relative zero velocity. They hung in space like observers at an amphitheater, perfectly positioned, perfectly still. And then they sent a message. It arrived on every communication frequency humanity had ever used, in every language Earth had ever spoken, with a clarity that suggested they'd been listening for a very long time. General Moss read the translation and felt something between relief and dread. People of Earth, we are the architects. We have observed your development with great interest. We have tested your responses to strategic scenarios. We have measured your capability, your restraint, and your tactical wisdom. You have demonstrated qualities we required verification of before proceeding. We request formal diplomatic contact. We come in peace. We come with information. We come with a choice. The Washington Command Center erupted in controlled chaos. Analysts cross-referencing the message, linguists verifying translation accuracy, security teams assessing threat potential. Dr. Webb sat motionless, staring at the words on his screen. The architects, he said quietly. They named themselves. They admitted orchestration. Colonel Park was already pulling up response protocols. This could still be a deception, a psychological operation before attack. Or it could be exactly what it says, Director Chin countered. We've been operating on the assumption that coordination meant hostility. What if we were wrong? General Moss raised her hand, silencing the debate. One step at a time. We respond. Carefully. We accept contact but maintain defensive posture. Captain Torres, prepare the standard diplomatic first contact package. 3 hours later, a small human delegation launched from Earth aboard the diplomatic shuttle Endeavour. General Moss commanded the mission personally, accompanied by Director Chun, Dr. Webb, and a full security detail. The shuttle approached the Architect fleet with transponders broadcasting peaceful intent on every frequency. Captain Torres led the fighter escort, 12 ships maintaining protective formation but weapons powered down. The closest Architect vessel, designated Prime 1 by Human Tactical, was unlike anything in Earth's database. Organic curves merged with geometric precision, materials that seemed to shift between solid and energy states, and a scale that dwarfed human engineering. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. A docking corridor extended from Prime 1, perfectly sized for human vessels. The Endeavour connected with mechanical precision that suggested the architects knew Earth specifications down to the millimeter. General Moss stepped through the airlock into an environment that made her breath catch despite decades of military discipline. The architect's ship's interior was vast, illuminated by light that had no visible source, with architecture that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could fully process. And waiting in what appeared to be a reception chamber stood three beings that confirmed humanity's worst fear and greatest hope. The architects were ancient. That much was immediately clear from everything about them: their technology, their bearing, their presence. They were humanoid in the broadest sense, but evolved along paths that Earth's biology had never imagined. Tall, slender, with features that seemed to shift subtly as if existing partially outside standard spacetime. One of them stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice resonated directly in Moss's mind without sound. "General Catherine Moss, we have observed you with particular interest. Your strategic decisions during the 7 test scenarios demonstrated precisely the qualities we hoped to find in your species." Director Chun activated her recording devices, capturing every detail. "You orchestrated the invasions. You sent 7 different species to attack Earth." "We orchestrated first contact scenarios," the architect corrected gently. "Not invasions. The species we selected were evaluated as likely to attempt hostile engagement based on their developmental psychology. We guided them toward Earth with carefully calibrated intelligence suggesting your world was vulnerable. We predicted your defensive responses with high accuracy. You exceeded our predictions." Dr. Webb found his voice, despite the surreal nature of conversing with beings that existed partially outside normal reality. "Why? What was the purpose of testing us?" The architect gestured, and holographic displays materialized showing galactic maps humanity had never seen. "To determine if your species possessed the specific combination of qualities necessary for survival in the coming crisis." The maps showed regions of space that made human stellar cartography look primitive. And spreading through those regions, highlighted in red, was something that made General Moss's tactical mind scream warnings. "The Devourers," the architect said simply. "A force that consumes civilizations, technology, and worlds. They have been expanding through this galactic sector for 6,000 of your years. They will reach Earth's region of space within 2 of your centuries." 2 centuries, Moss repeated, processing the timeline. "That's tomorrow in galactic terms." "Precisely, which is why we needed to know if humanity could be trained, prepared, and integrated into the defensive coalition we have been building." The 7 test scenarios were designed to assess specific qualities. Another architect stepped forward, its presence carrying the weight of millennia. "The Krell tested your weapons technology. The Vorash tested your tactical adaptability. The Venari tested your strategic creativity. Each scenario measured different aspects of your military capability. You passed all 7. But it wasn't just military capability you were testing," Dr. Webb said, understanding flooding through him. "The Wellington Protocol, you were measuring restraint, our ability to win without unnecessary destruction." "Correct," the first architect confirmed. "The Devourers can be defeated through overwhelming force. But civilizations that rely solely on force invariably turn that force upon each other after the external threat is neutralized. We needed species capable of measured response, of choosing restraint when power was available, of demonstrating wisdom alongside capability." Director Chun pulled up her tablet, accessing the intelligence data they'd gathered. "The coordinated communications between the species we defeated. You allowed that. You wanted them to start comparing notes." "Another test," the architect acknowledged. "Would you share information with former enemies to pursue truth? Would you cooperate when circumstances suggested conspiracy? Your general initiated backchannel communication with Commander Thexil 3 days ago. That choice demonstrated diplomatic flexibility." General Moss felt pieces falling into place. "You've been testing dozens of species this way. building a coalition of civilizations that demonstrate the right combination of strength and restraint. Hundreds of species, the architect corrected, across multiple galactic sectors. Those who pass the tests receive an offer, which is, join the coalition, share technology, train together, prepare for the Devourer's arrival, and when they come, stand united as a defensive force capable of stopping their expansion. The chamber fell silent. This was the choice the architect message had mentioned. Humanity could accept the offer, join something larger than itself, prepare for a threat that wouldn't arrive for 2 centuries, or refuse and face the Devourers alone. General Moss felt pieces falling into place. You've been testing dozens of species this way, building a coalition of civilizations that demonstrate the right combination of strength and restraint. Hundreds of species, the architect corrected, across multiple galactic sectors. Those who pass the tests receive an offer, which is, join the coalition, share technology, train together, prepare for the Devourer's arrival, and when they come, stand united as a defensive force capable of stopping their expansion. The chamber fell silent. This was the choice the architect message had mentioned. Humanity could accept the offer, join something larger than itself, prepare for a threat that wouldn't arrive for 2 centuries, or refuse and face the Devourers alone. Colonel Park's voice came through Moss's earpiece from the Endeavor. General, we're reading massive energy buildups across the architect fleet. Not aggressive configurations, but definitely active systems. Acknowledged, Moss replied quietly, then addressed the architects directly. You're showing us your capability, making sure we understand the scale of what we're facing. We are showing you what unified civilizations can achieve, the architect said. The defensive technologies we have developed, refined over millennia of cooperation. Earth possesses the foundation for these technologies already. You simply lack the context and time to develop them independently. Dr. Webb stepped forward, scientist curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. How many species are in your coalition? Currently, 417 species have joined. 83 are in various stages of testing. 12 have refused and chosen isolation. We respect all choices. General Moss made a decision that would define humanity's future. I don't have authority to accept your offer on behalf of Earth. That decision requires consultation with civilian government, international cooperation, and probably more debate than you can imagine. We understand. We do not require immediate acceptance. But, Moss prompted, knowing there was always a but. But the Devourers do not wait for bureaucratic processes. We offer a provisional arrangement. Earth maintains sovereignty and independence. We provide access to basic defensive technologies and coalition training facilities. Your species evaluates the partnership. In 2 of your years, Earth makes a final decision whether to join formally. And if we refuse in 2 years, then we wish you well and hope your species survives the Devourers with its independent capabilities. We do not coerce membership. Forced allies are unreliable. Director Chun caught Moss's eye, nodding slightly. The offer was reasonable, almost suspiciously reasonable, which meant the architects were either genuinely interested in willing cooperation, or playing a game so sophisticated humanity couldn't see the trap. Moss decided to trust her instincts. I'll take your provisional offer to my government. I can't promise they'll accept. We don't require promises, the architect said. We require informed choice. We will remain in your system for 30 of your days. Take that time to consider, debate, analyze. We will answer questions. We will demonstrate technologies. We will provide evidence of the Devourer threat. Make your decision with full information. The meeting concluded with formal diplomatic protocols that felt absurdly mundane given the scale of what had just been discussed. The human delegation returned to the Endeavor, launched back toward Earth, and within 6 hours General Moss was briefing the President, Joint Chiefs, and assembled world leaders on the most important decision humanity had ever faced. 3 weeks later, after debate that made previous international negotiations look simple, Earth's combined government issued a response. They accepted the architect's provisional arrangement. Limited technology transfer, training exchange, ongoing evaluation, and a commitment to make a final decision in 2 years. The architect fleet departed Earth's system with the same precision they'd arrived with, leaving behind 3 observer vessels and a communication relay that linked Earth to the broader coalition network. Humanity had passed the test. The real challenge was just beginning. 6 months after first contact with the architects, Captain Sarah Torres sat in her fighter cockpit in orbit above Earth, running training exercises with technology that still made her head spin. Coalition defensive systems that could track threats across light years. Weapons that bent physics in ways human scientists were still trying to understand. And most importantly, communication networks that connected her to 417 other species, all preparing for the same existential threat. Her squadron had expanded to include pilots from the Zephara, Krell, and Vorash, the same species that had tried to invade Earth during the test scenarios. Now they flew together, trained together, learned together. Commander Thexil, the Zephara fleet commander who'd led the last test invasion, served as Torres's tactical advisor. They'd become unlikely friends. In Washington, General Moss reviewed reports from coalition training facilities scattered across 12 star systems. Human soldiers were adapting faster than expected, bringing creative tactical approaches that impressed even the architects. The Wellington Protocol, developed for predictable scenarios, had evolved into something the coalition called the Terran Doctrine. Overwhelming capability deployed with surgical precision and minimal necessary force. Other species were adopting it. In Cambridge, Dr. Webb collaborated with architect researchers on probability models that span millennia. His database now included 417 species' tactical behaviors, and the patterns he'd identified on Earth were fractal, repeating across galactic scales. The architects had been right about humanity's potential, and they'd been right about the Devourers. Deep space monitoring networks detected the first Devourer scout elements 18 months into Earth's provisional membership. They were exactly as terrible as the architects had warned, autonomous weapon systems that consumed everything in their path, learning and adapting with each civilization they destroyed. The coalition fleet mobilized. 418 species, unified command structure, defensive technologies refined over 6,000 years. And at the center of the tactical formation, flying with the kind of calm professionalism that came from being tested and proven ready, were the humans of Earth. General Moss stood on the bridge of the coalition flagship, looking at the tactical display showing the approaching Devourer scouts. This was what the architects had prepared them for. This was why the tests mattered. She opened a fleet-wide channel, her voice steady. All ships execute Terran Doctrine defensive pattern. Show them what prepared looks like. The battle lasted 17 hours. The Devourer scouts were destroyed with 94% coalition fleet survival. Earth's forces performed flawlessly, their training and preparation paying off exactly as the architects had predicted. After action reports were filed, technology was refined, strategies were adjusted, and humanity, tested, trained, and proven, took its place as a full member of the coalition. No longer isolated, no longer unprepared, no longer wondering if they were ready for what the galaxy would throw at them. They'd been tested 7 times. They'd passed every time. And when the real war came, they were exactly where they needed to be. Standing with allies, prepared for anything, and absolutely refusing to panic. That's where we leave Earth and her defenders for now. The journey from isolated world to coalition member continues, but the foundation has been laid. Subscribe to see more stories of humanity's place among the stars, because this is just the beginning.